Alrighty, in this video I'm going to be going over what is UID in Linux. In the Linux operating system, UID stands for User Identifier. It is a unique numerical value assigned to each user account. The UID is used by the system to identify and differentiate between different users. Unix-like operating systems identify a user by a value called a user identifier, often abbreviated to user ID or UID. The UID is used to determine which system resources a user can access. What really is the UID in Linux? The UID in Linux is a numerical system that Linux uses to differentiate one user from another, so the system can know who to give system resources to and who to not. Why doesn't Linux just use the names of the users to differentiate who has elevated privileges and who doesn't? Because users can change their names if they want, and you could hypothetically end up in a situation where one user with greater privileges has the same name as a user with lesser privileges. And the system needs a way to tell the difference between the two. Why doesn't Linux just use the order in which a Linux user was created? Linux does, but it needs a way to give the original user a way it can recognize that user that won't change, and the unique identifier is that way. Also, it has to do with Linux permissions. When a file is owned by a user, it's much easier and better to set the files owned by a user or UID than a username. Let's say you reinstall Linux and you set a different username, but keep your home directory. If permissions were username based, you'd suddenly not own all your files. Using UIDs are easier because UID 1000 is always going to be the first normal user on your system, and it costs less space on the file system to store ownership in this way. What are the uses for UID? 1. Determining user permissions and access levels for files and resources on a Linux system. 2. Process management to associate running processes with the user and who initiated them. And then where are user IDs stored? In the etc. password file. So there you go. That is what UID is in Linux.